Hi everyone, welcome to Bucs UK podcast. It's episode 129. It's draft time. Well, rather, last week it was draft time, and rather than snap reactions, we've sat back, we've reflected, and now we're going to come back and tell you exactly who's going to make it, exactly who's going to get cut, because as we know, the draft is science. So we thought we'll canter through our various draft picks and then pull it all together at the end. Marianna, if we start with you then, Graham Barton from Duke. Obviously, the NFL.com says centre, but we're thinking, obviously said guard, but we're thinking centre, aren't we?
Yeah, he's an interesting one. He has played centre. He played about 5 games in his freshman year at centre, so he has played centre. He actually played mostly left tackle. But as usual, as we always know, the NFL tells us that the size isn't quite right, or their arms aren't long enough, or whatever the stats are in that case, and so they project him inside. As you say, they were projecting him at guard, but it looks like realistically we're going to move him back into centre and probably move Hainsey across. But I would think that the sort of real positive is his versatility. So I guess the real positive is if he doesn't work out at centre, during training camp, I guess that's where they'll figure it out. They can try them out at centre, they can try them out at guard, they can move that line around a bit and work out where he works best and where he fits in best and what really works well for the line. So I think in that aspect as well, he makes a really good pick, on top of his stats are just off the chart for an offensive lineman in general. So yeah, I like the pick due to the versatility. I can't say he's nailed on as a centre. Yeah.
We'll see. David, were you surprised by an O-line pick in the first round? I mean, 26 is still an area where you're expecting to get a starter, isn't it?
It is, and I think we knew that we definitely needed an upgrade there. The run game wasn't as effective as it should have been last year. A little bit more protection around Baker as well. Hainsey did a job. He did better than we expected, but I'm not sure necessarily he was a standout, and it was definitely an area that we needed an upgrade. I suppose, really we hit the 3 or 4 areas we needed overall in the draft, and this seemed the best guy on the board to pick at the time. So absolutely a starter, unlike some other franchise picks in the first round. So it made obvious sense really.
True. And so Tim, obviously, David is saying best player available. Marianna says this guy's off the charts. How much was he a steal? Was he a reach? Was this a good pick?
It was a good pick at the position. We took him at 26. There was talk of him going pretty much, 8 to 9 places higher than that, to be honest. So, fairness to Jason Light and the team, they waited and see who fell basically to them. And I thought before we went in, we had 2 positions in need, a real need in one. One of those was defensive end. And the second one then was this inside lineman. And everything you read, the one thing somebody said that I read the other day, he's got the attitude to replace Jensen. So that's a good starting point. And then you watch his versatility and size and so on. And the person he reminds me of then is Ali Marpet. Now, will he be as good as that? You can only wait and see. But again, a small school in terms of American football, not necessarily in terms of the size of school, but certainly in terms of footballing. So I liked it. He was one of the 2 players I wanted, and so was delighted when Light didn't have to make any trades, which was also a surprise this year to go along with it.
Yeah, I must admit, people staying up were probably like, oh, please don't trade back, please don't trade back. And it's interesting what you said about the Ali Marpet. Obviously, Duke is, as you say, by no means a small school, and it's not Hobart, is it, in terms of Ali Marpet? But it's interesting. It wasn't the first lineman off the board. And I think for me, it's really interesting to say whether was it genuinely these are our 5 needs, and let's see. We'll never know because we weren't inside
No,
outside that draft room. But I guess a quick consensus pick. Tim, first of all, do we think that he's going to be the starter week 1?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Not
David,
a
you're
shadow of
nodding.
doubt. Will he start at centre?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Marianna?
Abs-
As I say, I'm still not certain he'll start at centre, but I think he'll be a day 1 starter. I just think the speed at which we put that pick in when we actually came up on the board, I don't think we even waited. It was like we're on the clock, and the pick was in almost within a minute, which is like almost unheard of in that sort of first round. So I think we were nailed on that we were picking him when we got to that spot. So yeah, day 1 starter, I think.
And Tim, obviously you compared to Ali Marpet. For me, it's not directly the same, but I'm hoping we're going to get a Paul Gruber, obviously. I want someone that's, criminal, not in the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned. And production and consistency and power and respect are all the things you want to see.
It's partly also, Kieron, to do this versatility. Marianna also said about it, is versatility anywhere along the line. We just got to make sure, like we did with Ali Marpet, we have 1 year at centre with him. He was moved quickly back to left guard. We've got to make sure we settle on very quickly what this boy's best position is, regardless of whether it's centre or guard.
He's definitely got experience as well. He played over 40 games in his college career, which is a lot for a college career. I think he had a 5-year career at Duke, so he's got a lot of games in, a lot of experience. Most is at left tackle though, so that's the only sort of thing is how he's going to transition it. But we do know that he did play centre in his rookie year, and he's apparently done a lot of centre work in the sort of pre-draft workouts and things like that they all get them to do. So I'm sure that the Buccaneers had him, doing some snaps and so forth for the centre tryout when they've spoken to him, when they've seen him.
Okay, let's move on to our 2nd round pick then, 57th overall, and I can't get my head around the fact 2nd round we're picking 57th. That's the season was a success. I think we can all agree. And this was the first of only 2 defensive choices in the actual formal round of the draft before free agency. Chris Braswell from Alabama. Now, Marianna, I've kind of you were talking about all the draft picks coming out of Alabama, I think, in one of our previous podcasts. So we start with you. Outside linebacker in a Bucs 3-4. What are we expecting to see?
So this guy he's sort of more of a defensive end than a sort of outside linebacker type edge. He's played, bless him, he's kind of been the sort of bit part player behind the big names. So he's played a lot of games, but generally as a reserve sort of rotational player. That says nothing about his ability when he's playing on a really strong Alabama team, and he's got people like Will Anderson and Dallas Turner ahead of him. He is kind of a bit of a sort of in between. He's the sort of true in between edge and outside, DE and outside linebacker. But from everything I was reading from Saban, and I trust kind of Saban's word on this, he sees him more as a defensive end than a sort of drop back outside linebacker guy.
So does that mean we're going to be hoping for sacks?
Yes, very much so. And I love watching him. He got, I think, 8 sacks last year, was it? Yeah, 8 sacks. I've got on my chart 8 sacks last year, and 10.5 tackles for loss. And he also creates fumbles, 3 forced fumbles, which led the SEC. So, he's hitting hard and he's knocking the ball out and everything that we want from a guy. So everyone's sort of prepping us to have him taking over Shaq Barrett's spot and having Yaya Diaby on the other side. And my God, are the quarterbacks going to be scared because you've got speed coming from both sides.
That's a really good point.
4.6 40-yard so he's quick for the position as well. He's quick and he hits so hard. If you've ever watched any of his highlights, he just hits so hard. As I say, just he's obviously he's kind of been a little bit overlooked behind some really good other Alabama players, but I think we've actually again got a steal there.
Interesting. So very, very positive plaudits there from Marianna. Tim, are you happy we got the right player at the right point?
Again, the position was the right pick. Is it the right player? We'll wait and see. He's a one-season player, to be truthful, at Alabama at the moment. Marianna refers to his 8 sacks. Can I just say I was lucky enough to see one of them live, because he
Not
sacked,
too close, I hope.
he sacked Byron Brown when they played USF earlier on in September. So I didn't realise it at the time, but I looked that up today and I thought, yeah, I would have seen that live then. Yeah, quick off the ball, but so was JTS, so was Daquan Bowers, people like that. Now, that's my concern. He's a one-season player at the moment, but as Marianna alluded to with the stats, he's learned in a good team. He's learned from some good players, and he went there with the attitude of, I'm not going to start, but I'm going to compete against these guys. So let's hope he brings that attitude into the league this year. If he does, yeah, his speed apparently is unbelievable. So let's see what he can do. Just turn him loose all the time.
As the late great Madden says, speed kills, can't be coached, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
David, I guess in my mind, this is one of the positions where players can really make an impact in the NFL earlier on. You don't tend to see tight ends or quarterbacks maybe lighting up the league first year, but someone with the credentials like Chris has got, in the position that he's playing, hopefully can come in and make an impact.
Yeah, I mean, we've lost Shaq Barrett now, so we need someone to come in and take that mantle and get to the quarterback. We weren't prolific in that area last year. In my notes, sort of Tim touched on it, the one thing that scares the life out of me, he's got massive length, incredible speed, and I pray he's not another JTS. And hopefully, that he's definitely an upgrade. And if I look at sort of the first 5 or 6 picks we've had, this is the one that possibly scares me the most as a possible bust. But overall, I think he was the guy in the ball to go for at the time. And as a college of Alabama, hopefully he's got the pedigree to see that through.
So to try and sound like I know what I'm talking about, so in draft picks, we're saying high ceiling but possibly low floor. So one could go one way or the other. So I guess straw poll again. David, do we think this is a day one starter?
Well, he's got to be if no Shaq Barrett, unless we draft someone else in the meantime.
Marianna?
Yeah, like I say, we've got to play him.
Rotational starter, yeah, he's straight into the line. Whether he's starts officially according to the roster and the spots on the day, but he's definitely straight into the lineup, and he's playing significant time from day one.
Agree, Tim?
Third down pass rusher.
That's what I was thinking.
2 or 3 games. They won't go necessarily straight there. They'll probably give Logan Hall a look on just the outside to start with. But yeah, he seems like a good player. The bits of tape I went and watched after we drafted him, the speed is going to get him on the field early.
I think just to throw in there as well, special teams. He's already shown he can block punts, he can block kicks. He blocked, I think, a kick for a pick 6 that went all the way back. So he's got that ability. So potential special team starter as well immediately if he's really got that speed. That can be where that could really pay dividends if he could block us a kick early. I'll take that, thanks.
Well, the other interesting thing I think about linebacker position with the Bucs is last year, when you look at the snap counts, the Bucs were in a 5 DB nickel type setup quite a lot, even though they were still blitzing it. Often they were sending different players. And I guess with the departure of Devin White, I mean, I don't know, maybe you feel differently, but I kind of like, obviously it's Levante David +1 insofar as who's on at linebacker if we're in nickel. So I kind of wonder whether that spot might be up for grabs.
Potentially. I don't think he's ever played really inside anything. He's always been lined up outside again. So that'll be a learning curve for him.
Well,
But
I think, sorry, this might actually segue really nicely into the next pick.
You read my mind.
mm,
Because I think as we go into the next pick, so round 3, pick 89, safety, which raised a few eyebrows, I think, in Buck world. Tyke Smith then. Go on, Marianna.
Yeah, so you have to. I had to dig into this pick a little bit. I'd seen a fair bit of Georgia. I can't say I knew a lot about the lad. I did have to dig into it a bit. And he plays a position which is like a really unique Alabama sort of Saban school of technique, which they refer to as the star. And that is very much a hybrid between basically all of the positions, a linebacker, a cornerback, and a safety. So he's definitely played essentially slot corner. So he covers kind of a need for corner that we're desperate for, but he also can play like a linebacker. And a lot of the draft profiles and the read up on him and looking at the tape, he can play like a linebacker. He's a small frame, so physically he doesn't look like a linebacker, but he plays with the sort of force and the tackling of a linebacker. So the star position seems to be one that I think we'll use more, and we'll sort of play that Alabama style of where he will play that hybrid linebacker / corner role, and you won't know necessarily if we're playing sort of nickel or if we're playing him as a safety or how we're playing him on at the time, which will allow for a bit more sort of hiding what our defensive schemes are doing, I think.
So when you say that, I'll be honest, my heart lurches. I've just had to Google the name to see who I'm thinking of, but it made me think of Mark Barron.
Aaron.
Tim, you're nodding. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody with Mark Barron who didn't have the pace to cover in the backfield, but could tackle. I said something similar to Marianne in my notes here. He makes tackles for loss, so he can play around the line of scrimmage. He's a very similar build to Winfield, plays in a similar type of way. So that could allow us some of that versatility of, is it going to come from Winfield? Is it going to come from Smith or somewhere else? So it's a good pickup, again, from a good school. He was on the national championship teams, although he didn't play that much within them. But again, he would have learned that culture. So yeah, a nice pickup. Like Marianne, didn't know a great deal about him, transferred into Georgia. So, he's obviously gone looking for competition, which is always good. If he'd gone the other way and went back to West Virginia or something, you would have thought, is that the type of... But he's gone looking for that competition and wants to play at the top level. Good tackler. So could be a working man's Winfield, possibly. Not quite a Rolls Royce, but we're not talking Morris Merida either.
And obviously, you mentioned Winfield. We've got Whitehead. In my head, David, the Bucs safeties are pretty much set. It's probably one of the stronger parts of the roster. But it sounds like it could be this nickel, Marion, you call it the star, the sort of hybrid role. Do you think that might change how the Bucs are lined up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Smith is his frame is small. So it would worry me if he played a lot of cornerback. I think he'll get burnt and done by big receivers. But I think, he's a big tackler, this guy. And he makes plays very much alongside Winfield. He breaks up plays, he gets underneath, and he picks the ball. And I think that's definitely where we're going to be playing him.
Okay. So I guess I'm starting to fade with my question, day one starter. Sounds like we're probably not convinced. Day one starter, David?
It will depend where we do with linebackers, I think.
Yeah.
Like I say, we've lost Devon, so what do we do to fill that gap? And what's the scheme that we start to use?
Marianna, we think we're going to see him much?
We'll see him a bit, but yeah, you know, it will be in situational sort of play. It won't be he won't be sort of the regular starter in that position. It'll be situational, I think.
Do you agree, Tim?
Yeah, he's got to beat out Christian Etienne first.
It does feel like I don't know how long I've been a Bucs fan, but for at least half of it, we've been saying we've got a great young secondary, really good young secondary, so much potential in this young secondary, and we just keep adding to it by making the secondary younger. We'll see what happens. And then, so the back end of round 3, if your eyebrow was already halfway up your face, it probably went somewhere towards your crown with the next pick. Although actually reading the reviews of taking Jalen McMillan as a wide receiver from Washington, pick 92, it seems like the rest of the NFL is just waiting for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin to go and get their pensions. But Marianna, let's start with you. Clearly, I'm in the minority.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the Washington situation. Both him and Odunze were both 1,000-yard receivers in 2022. He was just overshadowed by Odunze, I think, last year, really. He had some injuries. He didn't play as much last year. So I think he's a really good wide receiver and a little bit of a steal, I think, again, at that position. I think, as you say, there's that sort of eyebrow raised as, do we need another wide receiver? We've got Godwin, we've got Evans, but you can, you always have injuries. You have situations where you need other wide receivers. You rotate players a bit more. So I think it's a really good pickup. I like it. And yeah, eventually we are going to see drop off from Evans or from Godwin, and we've got to prepare for that. The NFL was it not for long? So let's see, because we don't know if Godwin might get traded at some point or Evans chooses to retire. So we have to prepare for the future, and I think this is a guy that will probably play a little bit, but we can talk about that obviously in a bit. But he is more of a sort of development into potentially taking over one of those roles in the future.
Tim, Jalen McMillan, then should I buy my jersey?
I wouldn't buy it at the moment. I wrote here slot receiver, Chris Godwin replacement after 2024 if we don't resign Godwin long term. They already said this week now Godwin is moving back into the slot. That's exactly where this guy lines up all the time. Odunze and Polk was the other guy who were both drafted quite highly at Washington. He was their third guy, only because Polk came on last year. Otherwise, he was the second guy. So he's played at the top level for a long time and caught quite a lot of balls as it's gone. Yeah, a decent pick, depending on how we play out over the next 12 months, to be honest. His feet are good, his hands are good. So all you want is a wide receiver to start with, the rest you'll learn. He doesn't drop balls.
That seemed very important. David, as Marianna said, 1,000-yard receiver in college, but let's be honest, my granny could get 1,000 yards in college the way they throw the ball. So should we get excited?
Yes, I think this guy actually could be a bit of a steal. Everything I've read about him, actually, a lot of people like this pick. We keep talking about Evans and Godwin, but we are in desperate need for a third receiver. And too many times we have Godwin taking the ball in the backfield or very short. I know we've said that we're going to use him in slot a lot more, but actually we do need to get someone else downfield other than Evans. So I think we might see him a lot more than people expect this year.
Okay, well, that'll be interesting. And again, receiver is one of those positions where it's easier to make an earlier impact in your career, probably. I mean, the game moves a lot faster as we hear, and it's a lot more physical. But I think it's one of those things where you can have certain plays, certain personnel and rotations that you're in on. Although interesting, as you say, Tim, if he is moving, if Godwin is going into the slot and Jalen's in the slot, there's only so many slots you're going to want to get through, isn't there? So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he develops. But Godwin is as good a slot receiver is out there. So even if he doesn't play a great lot in the first season, he's going to learn from one of the best at that position.
Okay, well, we'll see. So on to round 4 then. Pick 1, 2, 5. And spoiler alert, I loved the tail end of the draft. I thought this was much more fun, much more interesting. It's the best named American football player ever, obviously. Running back Bucky Irvin. I mean, he's not a Marvel superhero. He clearly should be. David, we'll start with you. Running back, again, probably a position that people said we need some depth.
Yeah, I mean, Bucky Bucs.
Yeah.
It's going to come, isn't it? You're going to have the logo out there pretty soon. Really elusive guy. He's really good at spotting the gaps. He can make people miss tackles, move downfield, and also a bit like Rashad White, he's really good at receiving as well. Gets his hands on the ball. I think before, if it was Rashad in the backfield, it was one thing, but then as soon as Keyshawn Vaughn or one of the other receivers come in, you almost knew they were going to run or nothing. They weren't really going to be catching the ball. This guy still keeps both options open, and I think he's going to have a big part to play as well. Maybe second, third downs a bit more, and certainly as the season goes on, I think start sharing the load more and more. But I think this guy's got some real upside to him.
Marianna, Plucky Bucky.
I love the pick, much like all of you guys. I think we were all looking at the stats, and he's small, but he breaks tackles. There was a really long article. I wish I could tell you who it was, because I feel like I need to give them credit. If I find it, I'll pass on the link and we can maybe put it in, because it was a great statistical analysis of how he breaks tackles versus defenses that miss tackles. And basically he overperforms. You can say there's a stat based on breaking tackles, and he breaks them at about sort of 37 to 40% of the time. But he does that on defenses that miss tackles a lot less. So sort of 25 to 30% of the time. So he's overperforming versus the defenses he was playing at. Obviously, again, over 1,000 yards in 2 college seasons. Whether your nan could do that as well, I'm not sure.
It's pretty shifty.
She's pretty
if she's allowed to stay on a scooter.
Plus the sort of 300-400 receiving yards in both those seasons as well. So yeah, love the pick. I think, like David, sort of we'll see him as a change of pace back and see how he fits in. 4th round pick, you never know, but I do like the pick, and I like to see it. It's always the size thing. When you see a small running back, it's the size and whether that will actually equate into the NFL and a really good running back in the NFL. But
it's a really good point. The physicality of the NFL, and there's not a good form overall, is there, for young, tiny running backs not being completely battered in the NFL. I guess, Tim, for me, the main question is kind of, is he another Rashad White? Is he complementary, kind of, with I guess with Dunn and Allstott, you knew what you were getting, and I can't quite see what Irvin and White look like.
Very similar to me. Neither of them run particularly well between the tackles, although White did improve as the season went on last year. They're both much better in space. Irvin's feet, when you see the video highlights, it does look a bit like Madden. He stops on a sixpence and is gone, even though they say he didn't test really well. He wasn't quick. People didn't catch him. Jerry Rice back in the day, people said he wasn't quick. Nobody ever caught him from behind. And this guy is quite similar in that respect. Nobody really tackles him that quickly. So, fourth round pick. Hey, it's a good one. There's not a lot to lose from these picks on in, if we're truthful. He's going to be a spot player. he's probably going to take quite a bit of Chase Edmonds' carries and plays. That's where I see his role. And I thought Chase Edmonds did a fairly decent job last year coming in. So it'll be quite interesting to see how he goes. But we won't have to see the likes of Kieron Vaughan again on the field, which is, one pace which is slower than me.
Yeah, I think
Your times are getting better, I see, Tim.
Yeah, they are a bit, Dave. Yeah, I'm still slow, but in a bit better. My 40-yard time needs some work, though.
at least you got to put your jersey on game day.
Yeah,
although
it
does worry me when you say, like Rashad White, not too good between the tackles. We do know the Bucs have a penchant for running up the gut.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see
We just don't have a power back, do we?
Yeah.
No.
We bruising runner.
The only thing we
the
hate
way
worse
our
than
offensive line is played, the only people who are going to make yards up front at the moment, hopefully we'll be better this year, is a big bruiser. And again, we still haven't got one this year. We haven't had one since Fournette left. And it seems to be, I know it's a pass-catching league, though, this year, and every year. So is the NFL moving away from those types of backs anyway?
I mean, there's still a market for Henry and Barkley and others, it seems, in the NFL. But I guess they're still single backs. What we don't have much is that sort of lead back, tailback type sort of two twin backfield setup.
Yeah. I'd still worry for us run the goal line from 2 yards out, powering it in at this moment.
Yeah, the only thing I hate worse than 1st and 10 is 3rd and 1.
Yeah.
Anything but 3rd and 1. Okay, so we it sounds like we were rooting for Irvin, and that we'll hope he makes it. Then the Bucs went to sleep for round 5 and came back in round 6, pick 220, guard Elijah Klein. Now this is I can't. It's like tale of two cities here. You've got Elijah Klein from the prolific University of Texas El Paso Miners. However, the guy is 6'4", 319 pounds, and everywhere I read, I hear the word agility. So clearly a 320-pound agile thing. I don't understand. David, help me work this one out.
I mean, it's all down, like you say, huge size and strength, but apparently this guy's footwork is incredible. The way he can sort of run linebackers and read the plays, that's what it's down to, really. It's just, his movement line seems to be really good.
Tim, I mean, the write-ups for this for a 6th-round draft pick, I've never seen anything quite like it.
Yeah, they all raved about it. I looked at it, I thought, who?
Yeah.
Powerhouse of University of Texas, El Paso. Not the normal sort of places we go. But it's a small school, or smaller school, that we've done very well with offensive linemen over the years. We've now got one that we say in the 1st round, and the bit I wrote about Barton was attitude and like hitting. What I read about Klein is attitude and likes hitting. So we are trying to get nastier, but the seams of it up front. Play with a bit more attitude. Let's not backtrack. Let's try and dominate up front. Whether he'll get there, we'll come back to now in a moment. But depth at this moment.
But it's interesting though. I think you've really put your finger on the pulse there, because the Bucs, again, traditionally in latter years, dare I say, they focused more on pass blockers than run blockers. They've been more skilled, cerebral, stand back, sort of intellectual linemen rather than see it, hit it, thump it, sort of up front. But it seems like Klein is very much sort of going to be in a run scheme. He wants his first step to be forwards. I think, is that fair to say?
Absolutely, and just not with the draft, but with a couple of the offensive players we brought in free agency. Those similar types of attitude. It seems to me we've shifted slightly in what we want to draft and what we want the team makeup to be.
Now, Marianna, you watch as much college football as the three of us combined. I'm sure you've seen him probably a few times.
I have to admit, I don't think I've seen that much UTEP football. I will say, though, obviously I've gone back and tried to find some highlights of offensive linemen. has actually been the sort of bane of my last few weeks. I've been watching or attempting to watch highlights of offensive linemen pre-draft, post-draft. This guy, I mean, he's going to be a right guard, isn't he? He's played 55 games and he's played, I think, all but 2 at right guard. He's going to go to right guard, I think. He's depth, as you say. He's depth, and and as you rightly pointed out, run first college, like in terms of their offense. So he'll be a run blocker, like primarily. He has to develop into the pass blocking. That's where they highlighted his weaknesses. He's definitely depth. He's rotational at best. I mean, 6th round, we got to hope he develops into a player over the next sort of year or so. But as Tim and Dave both pointed out, he's got the attitude and he's got, you know, that sort of nastiness, and I think that he's a great fit for what we're trying to build on that O-line.
So we think depth there, but actually, when you add Klein and you add Barton, and you know, it wasn't a bad line last year. The wins, the losses, the playoffs. It sounds like we could be moving in the right direction. Okay, so the final draft pick there, round 7, pick 246. The only thing I love more than special teams is tight ends. Devin Culp, again from Washington, double dipping from the university. By all accounts, this guy's sort of 70% wide receiver and 30% tight end, which is probably a bit opposite to the Cade Otton block first, catch hopefully afterwards. Tim, we'll start with you. What do you think of Culp?
Very little I know about him. Again, this one literally did come down to, sorry, never heard of him. I do apologise, Devin Culp, but I hadn't. But again, he's bringing one thing our tight ends haven't got, and he's bringing some speed to the game. So the ability to get over the middle and 15, 20 yards downfield. In fairness to Otton, very good catcher of the ball, proper catcher of the ball, but not built for speed. So he could get down the field. Whether he'll get on the field is another side of it, because his block, he's not very big in terms of weight and so on. So he isn't going to do a lot for us in the blocking game. But 3rd down, maybe throw him down the field in 4 receivers, and then suddenly you've got this tight end running a 4-3-4 down the field. Who knows what's going to happen?
Could probably be a good special teams contributor as well. I'm imagining. So Marianna, are we expecting Kellen Winslow Jr. here?
Devin Culp, interesting character. He drops about as much as he catches, which is my slight concern. He either catches amazingly and like throws himself into some amazing acrobatic catch over the top of someone, or he drops what you think is an easy ball. So that's a little bit frustrating to watch. As Tim's pointed out, his speed is something else though. And whether he does translate to tight end or more a wide receiver guy, that's another thing. Do we actually play him at tight end? Because his blocking is not brilliant either. So would he make a better sort of wide receiver than tight end? What he does have, and what he's walking into, is who he refers to as his big brother in Cade Otton, who he played with at Washington as well, not to forget, as well as obviously Jalen McMillan being a close friend of his as well. So he's coming into a setup where he's got people around him that he knows that can support him, I would think, like emotionally and in development of NFL, which is, I think, always a good thing for that sort of 7th round pick that you know is probably on the bubble of whether they're going to start or not long term.
Good point.
Yeah. David, we like this.
Yeah, I mean, say his blocking is going to be a big issue. That could hinder him most of all starting if they do try and play him at tight end. So I think it's going to be a work in progress, this one. Like I say, I think if we've got 7 Washington players on the roster now, 7 or 8, we're becoming a bit of an alumni there at the minute. So yeah, it's definitely a work in progress, this run. Again, he could be one of these runs that just fits straight into the NFL and is a surprise, but got work to do, I think.
Well, so the knocks so far only seem to fall into two categories: then can't block and can't catch. So we'll see how we get on. As long as the guy can run, that's okay then.
Yeah, but you can't cover speed. If he
Reminds
happens
me
to
of
catch that
the
ball,
it's the receiver in Necessary Roughnesses. You just have to get it in the face cage. We'll see how we do. Okay, so let's take a step back then, and overall, Marianna, start with you. So as I said, there were only two defensive picks in the draft. You can talk a little bit about free agents, but actually, in the past we've seen Jason Light, double dip, haven't we, or triple dip, and actually it felt like it was a spread. Should we read too much into that, or is it just the way the picks fell?
I think very much it's the way the picks fell. Jason Light himself has come out and said you can't fill every gap in one draft. You can't, draft every position in the one draft. So they've gone out and filled the positions with probably, certainly at the high end. I think they've got some really good players to fill two of the positions, which were obviously the edge rusher that we said we all needed, and the interior lineman. Looking at the depth chart on the Bucs page itself, the hole I kept gravitating to was cornerback, and I still feel that's a weakness, despite talking about Tyke Smith potentially playing some slot corner. He's not replacing what we've traded away, so I still feel there's that sort of weakness in that corner position. And that's a bit more of a skill position that I don't think you're going to necessarily pick up, an undrafted free agent. I say that Christian Isian came out of undrafted free agent from Rutgers, so who knows? We do have a guy that we picked up. I'm going to murder his name now. I think it's Tyker. Is it Tyker Funkenberg? Thunderberg. Tyrek Thunderberg. I'll get there.
Thunderbergs, I'll go.
Thunderbergs, I'll go. Yes, there you go. We've already got his catchphrase. Who came out of Appalachian State. He's been in athletics as well. He is very, very quick. Slightly undersized, but he's an interesting one that I think could potentially sort of sneak in at cornerback with us. As I say, very, very quick again. He's another sort of 4.4 runner. So he also had like a 6th, 7th round grade on him and didn't go drafted. So I feel like that's still the weakness area though. But other than that, I think great draft and filled a lot of the positions that we needed to, and has got some development pieces in place for moving forward.
Tim?
yeah, not a lot really to add to that. It was a very safe draft. We knew the players we wanted. You can tell if it goes well when Jason Light virtually has the weekend off of trading. So he was happy the way everything was going. He's quite openly said he's showing a lot of faith in McCollum developing again. And in fairness to him, he got his tackling improved a lot last year from his first year in the league. And again, he can run. Whether he's a full-time starter and whether Dean can stay fit and on the field will be a couple of our challenges in that side. But we've done well there. We talked earlier about how we filled the need at linebacker. There's just one player to just keep an eye on. There's a guy called Kieron who's come out of Florida State, who can do all of these jobs as well. Sounds a bit like a Devin White type player who can get after the quarterback, can tackle. Hopefully he can read the game slightly better than Devin White long term. And that could be a potential there who could fill that gap.
Interesting. David, overall, in terms of the draft, not just the Bucs, I mean, it threw up a few surprises, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. I mean, we'll perhaps talk about Atlanta in a minute. It's probably the biggest surprise. I'm just sort of finishing off very well on our draft. I think if you look at the start of last season, we were all had in mind that we were at the start of a massive rebuild, and it was going to take 3 or 4 years. Come the end of last season, we were right ahead of schedule. I think we knew the positions that we need to strengthen on, and largely we've added to that and we've addressed it. So, I mean, where you look at actually the overall development of the team moving on from Super Bowl era, we're way ahead of the needle here. So, you know, I think it's hugely positive. And actually, Jason Light and the team have got a hell of a record in draft picks in the last few years and getting them on the field. So, yeah, it's pretty positive. I think we addressed a lot of the areas.
I agree. No one's saying rebuild anymore.
No, exactly. You know, we're already ahead of the game. So yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing but positives coming out of it. Everyone seems to rate our draft as an A or an A plus. People don't know probably far more about the wider college game than I certainly do. So yeah, gotta like it. But it's just like everything else, isn't it? You draft people, they can be number 1 draft pick, they can be, you know, right down the bottom. It's all a crapshoot at the end of the game, isn't it? You just hope that they listen to the coaching and get on the field and deliver. That's all you can do.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Marianna, David talks about report grades, and I guess for us over in the UK, we're quite reliant on those. I kind of the wisdom of the crowds. The more of them I read, the more I trust the grades overall. Clearly, the surprise grades, I guess, were for our divisional rivals. It feels like people like the Saints and didn't like the direction the Panthers and the Falcons went in.
Yeah, I mean, we all have to kind of question the Falcons' first pick.
I'm just trying to pronounce it properly without getting cancelled.
Yeah, a team absolutely desperate for pass rush.
I think it's panic, isn't it?
Absolutely desperate for pass rush. Choose their quarterback of the future when they've also signed a quarterback on a 4-year deal in terms of Cousins. I'm not sure the Atlanta fans were entirely certain what was happening with that pick. But do we find ourselves sort of eating a bit of crow in a couple of years' time if he comes on and completely obliterates us in a game or something? Let's
eating
see.
Falcon.
But certainly, I you know, that's one that I struggle with exactly what they were doing there. But I'm sure someone's got the logic. The Saints were always going to have a difficult draft. I looked at theirs. They basically got a player in round 1, round 2, and then nothing until like the 5th, 6th round. So they had a big gap in the middle where they had no picks, and that's where you get a lot of value. I think you look at, we've got 2/3 and a 4th. We've got some real value in those picks that we've got in those positions. Once you start getting into 5th, 6th, 7th, we've said it ourselves. These players are going to develop. Hopefully, they may not ever make the field. Unfortunately, it is just how the game is. So the Saints, I can't complain. Or like if I was a Saints fan, I think that they've certainly filled a need on the O-line. Probably losing Ramczyk, and similar to the way that we've lost Jensen. So they filled a need on the O-line and they got a cornerback. But as I say, after that, it was a bit, their developmental picks, they're not going to be starting, they're not going to be difference makers. The Panthers, I'm not sure. I'm a bit of a Texas fan, so I've got to wear my Texas burnt orange at this point and say I quite like their draft picks because they had Brooks and Jatavian Sanders in there, so I like their draft picks. I think, you know, the Panthers are rebuilding, and they're rebuilding a lot more. They need everything all over the field, so they've got their couple of targets in Leggett at wide receiver, and as I say, in Jatavian Sanders. How their draft plays out, I think they're still probably 2 or 3 drafts away from really competing. But I actually think the Falcons may have set themselves back with their draft, because I really think they, as an NFC South, you know, looking at the division, they pick a scary edge rusher in that first round, and we're changing up our whole scheme to have to deal with that. And we don't. They didn't end up picking an edge rusher until like the 3rd round, I think. So
it's interesting.
Yeah, it seems an odd one for the Falcons. I think they could have strengthened a lot more than they did and really compete against us. And I feel like theirs was not a draft that makes them. You know, I feel like their draft sets them back and our draft sets them forward, sets us forward. But as you say, it's not a science. So on paper, it does that.
That's right. And Tim, there's a reason we play the games. We know. But where the NFC South finished off and where they've drafted, do you agree with Marianna? Kind of are the Bucs looking more competitive?
I still think we're currently the team to beat. While you've got the title, you're always the team to beat, because until they win the South, they've got to get past us to win the South. Atlanta, I think the only person more surprised at Atlanta Falcons fans was probably Kirk Cousins, by the sounds of it. It was a bit of a shock. Not just, you know, they drafted a quarterback, but they drafted a quarterback who was already 24, has already had 2 serious knee injuries, may not play for 2 years or so, depending on Cousins and how he performs. Is that really a future that somebody could already be 26, 27 by the time they take charge of the team? Don't know.
And with a high draft pick as well, I think that's the thing. Dare I say it, mentioning Kyle Trask, I think people knew the timing of it, the balance between high round versus quality and caliber of player. It felt like a safer or more explainable pick than this one.
Yeah, no doubt he's a good player, and he's a Tampa local, so you've got to cheer for him to a degree, only to a degree, unfortunately. As for the rest, the Saints just look as if they're getting worse and worse every year, which is brilliant, because to be in the crowd when they went silent after 1 quarter last year was absolutely awesome. The Panthers, I like the running back from Texas, but you get a running back coming from an injury like he had. Is this going to be a Nick Chubb scenario all over again? You never quite know. So I was quite happy the way we came out against the other 3 teams. The draft itself was fairly predictable for the first few picks. They were pretty obvious, and it wasn't that exciting in terms of, apart from Penix, everybody just seemed to be a normal sort of pick that was expected. So I didn't have the fun of it this year, because I didn't see it until a Friday evening. So I was waiting for all these trades to happen, and a few of them did. Apart from Penix, Bo Nix being drafted when he did, Denver could have got him at the top, traded up at the top of the 2nd round or the back end of the 1st, and got that player. So there was a couple of interesting ones, but yeah, overall, really, really pleased with it.
That's good. Obviously, we always hope that as long as the Saints are losing, but if the Saints can't lose, we'll keep Sean Payton still losing. I need to look at over the cap or whatever to see whether the Saints are still in the same cap hell this year, but we can but hope.
They probably are for 5 years, I would have thought.
So David, that wraps up our draft update, but we do have a quick club update because someone's turning 40 this year, aren't they?
Yeah.
Sadly, none of us.
Our 40th anniversary, huge year for the club. So as we've already set out for our members, got a couple of big events taking place. Obviously, we've got our AGM and Cornhole Championships, which get bigger and more fun every year on 15th of June. Then we're all desperately waiting now for the schedule. Hopefully it drops this Thursday, and then we can really start planning. The big thing, obviously, is trip to Tampa. We want as many as our members out there. We'll be having a number of events and a big club meal. No doubt we'll be having tours around Advent Health Centre and the AJ, all going to a game. I think it's going to be a fantastic weekend. And as soon as we get our schedule, we can all start planning all of our activities. So, yeah, roll on Thursday. Can't wait.
Can't wait indeed. Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you, Marianna. Thank you, David. Thank you guys for watching. If you've made it this far, well done. You are hardcore. Tell us in the comments whether you agree, who you think we should have drafted. Give us your report grade, and we will see you again very soon. But until then, go Bucs.
Go Bucs.